Okay, Vladimir Nabokov's Nin, the title of which, the titular title of the Timothy Nin is which is the subject of a great many like disagreements and like a miscommunication and definitely like a mispronunciation of his name, which shows up again and again. People call him like Timothy, or something like the American kind of standard of Timothy, or namely Nin or Pnin or something, or any of those variations. But it is Nin. This P is silent, and that took me a little while to figure out. But so I didn't feel totally alone in the, but I did feel bad for the main character. The main character this is described as one of Nabokov's like funniest books, and I understand that. It's his most humorous. It was a little bit later in his career. This came out in the 1957, and that was right after what Lolita was like 55 or something. So that's obviously probably his most famous ones, infamous ones at that too. Definitely, I think he said it was his most difficult book too. But this one is lighthearted. It has a lighthearted thing, and it is something of a campus novel. It made me think a little bit of John Williams Stoner, and only in the fact that this quiet life of John Williams Stoner, that kind of not privileged, not necessarily underprivileged, but undistinguished kind of, not really all that great, not glamorous, definitely not glamorous. I didn't get like a glamorous anything, but the prose of Nabokov is definitely that, is definitely like dancing. I believe John Updike called it. Nabokov, on the back here it says, Nabokov writes prose the only way it should be written, that is ecstatically. So everything is like a bouncing, and it's like, it was a tragicomic in some sense, because Nin is a professor, and this is why it was a campus novel, and he is teaching Russian language, and it's a kind of a dead college. It's like a class where literally like a few people show up, and the students are always like kind of making a joke of him. Like, he's like kind of somewhat of the butt of a joke. People he's not. It's like Nin doesn't realize how unpopular he is with his students, and they kind of like hide off, and they go off to the kind of like the campus grounds, and like they kind of like waste time and kind of disrespect him. But basically, it starts out kind of right in the middle of Pin's midlife when he's taking a train and he's like kind of like assuming, and he's like kind of thinking about all the stuff that happened, and there's like a lot of great deal of flashbacks of like what happened back in Russia, where Nin is from. He's an emigre from that, as a teacher back there too, and he is on a train, and he goes into this college town somewhere in the kind of, in a nice little metropolitan area, but it's kind of like a little bit of like a fly off the. It's not like that. It's kind of like a little bit of a forgettable looking town, but he stops there thinking it's a right turn, but he ends up being in the wrong town. Unbeknownst to Nin, he ends up taking up this teaching opportunity anyway at this, I think it's called the Wayne, or the Waynesdale College, I think they called it. But yeah, it's like a really interesting, like the way it starts off. I just want to read the first sentence. Chapter 1. The elderly passenger, sitting on the north window of the inexorably moving railway coach, next to an empty seat and facing two empty ones, was none other than Professor Timothy Nin, ideally bald, suntanned, and clean-shaven. He began rather impressively with that great brown dome of his tortoise-shell glasses, making infantile absence of eyebrows, and a pale, thick upper lip, and strong man torso in the tight tweed coat, but ended somewhat disappointingly in a pair of spindly legs. So, there's a bit of that kind of first sentence of Lolita, like, 4'1" and sock, and, like the tip of her trill and the bottom of her traveling down one through. It's kind of it's a dancing kind of, poetic kind of, imagery in that. So you get kind of the picture of kind of almost a comical looking guy who's like definitely out of place, and the whole novel is like about how out of place he feels, because he's always like thinking about and kind of not necessarily brooding over, because Nin isn't really an unpleasant fellow. He's quite he's quite affable when he needs to. He doesn't offend anybody. He doesn't go out of his way to offend anybody, at least. But he did have kind of a little bit of a tragic past. Like, he has his undying love for this woman named Liza, who he married, I believe, back in Russia, and they both, Elizaveta basically abandoned him, and he is he's stuck in that. He's still very much in love with her, and it's very much an unrequited kind of deal. She ends up going off and marrying, I believe, a doctor. I think there's another character by the name of Dr. Eric Wind, but I'm not sure if she goes off and has an affair with him or it's a different person. But Eric Wind is this other guy who's very humorless and kind of a character in his own right, of just being kind of a somewhat foil to the other characters. And yeah, so Nin ends up teaching this class, and a lot of the novel, there's not a lot of bouncing back and forth. There's not a grand plot, really, and that's why I kind of described it, or compared it to Stoner, because there was a similar thing of while Stoner's the whole the whole duration of John Stoner's life, I believe that was this is just kind of glimpse into his midlife. A great deal of Pin's life. You get Nin's life in there. You get a pretty hefty kind of view into his life, a kind of God's eye view into different things, and basically so Nin ends up teaching at this place, and there's a lot of different kind of campus politics going on with the faculty. Some people kind of toy around with different things. A lot of people are very kind of wryly opportunistic and very kind of a resting yacht kind of from old Goryeo. That kind of just always seeking the next kind of thing, using people as kind of fodder and cannon fodder, and basically cogs and wheels is what they see. These people, the campus faculty, they just want to get their kind of little bit of 15 minutes of campus fame, and then it's over with. So that's kind of a lot of it revolves around subterfuge and treachery and deceit, and Nin is just the utmost flat arc throughout it all. He's just all he cares about is just going back, is just doing his little job. He doesn't really care about all this. He's longing for Russia with that quiet solitude of just but he attends the parties. He goes to all these different kind of faculty parties that they have, and he he's somewhat the butt of a joke. I get the sense, I might be wrong, but he's people kind of he teaches, and he uses a very old, out-fashioned kind of archaic way of teaching his class, of teaching Russian, and he uses old books from Gogol or Tolstoy and other Russian authors, maybe Pushkin. He uses them as the staples, because it's the old world Russia, and that's his great, very cherished kind of thing. And he's longing to go back to that, and he gets to live out this kind of fantasy, I guess, of just kind of longing with, and his students are just don't understand him at all. They're just this is boring. We can't stand when Nin comes and teaches his class, because he takes it so seriously, and he's always talking about what things were in Russia, and the world that used to be his, but now he's in this quiet American life that's not sustainable in his mind. But yeah, so I'd like to read a few quotes, just because there's a few themes that I saw that kind of I saw reflect other Nabokov, Nabokov himself. There's something he says about, he was afraid of touching his own wrist. He never attempted to sleep on his left side, even in those dismal hours of the night when the insomniac longs for the third side of, after trying the two, he has. So this is another thing I noticed with Nabokov. This was expressed throughout the Invitation to a Beheading, which is that of insomnia, and unable, which I can kind of relate to right now, unable to sleep. This inability, no matter how much you may want it, to just kind of, and that's something, there's something very interesting that Nabokov, I think, it was a Speak memory, I think, it was one of his memoirs, where somebody, I'm not doing it justice at all, but he said something effective, I envy those people that fall asleep with, like, on subway, on trains or transits or tram cars, and they're, the effortless ability people just have to, like, fall asleep in between stops and stuff like that. And he's like, dang it, how I envy those people, because he cannot get a wink of sleep with the life of him unless, like, even, like, if every, kind of ergonomic way of sleeping, like, he just has this kind of express, struggle with, rest, and just, that, it was almost alien to him. So that's kind of, you see that theme. I've noticed a motif through the Nabokov that I've read so far. And yeah, I guess that's, aside from that, and there's some, there's lots, one thing this isn't even a bad point about it, but, just the amount of, Nabokov himself was an entomologist, I believe, so he was something, he had other interests outside of writing. I believe he was like a chess grandmaster, and he actually kind of incorporated a lot of different kind of like strategies and stuff like that from chess, I think, to writing books, or vice versa. And I think, as much as I don't know about chess aside from the Stefan Zweig novel, the role game chess story, but yeah, the dimension outside, basically, his interests are also that in entomology, which is like, he had a fascination with not just wildlife as a whole, but he had a great interest with like insects and the study of insects, and like particularly butterflies. You see that kind of imagery of the butterfly, or like the that glasswing kind of, mentioning like the exact kind of breed, and of that, of those studies that, like these entomologists and, people throughout history, zoologists as a whole branch, I guess, over that. But yeah, he had a fascination, like a really strong interest in, like, kind of the natural world, and like, he's, like from the exact, description of the down to the nitty gritty detail of, like, the tree, the tree stump, or this or the verdure, or like what type of, not just any type of bush. It was this type of bush. It wasn't just any type of, meadow type of thing. It was like this exact kind of tree, or this exact type of flower, and butterfly, and the insect, and all these different things. They add up, and it is a bit frenetic. It took me, so this is a bit of a deceptive thing for me, because it did take me a little bit longer than usual, because I was expecting, like, oh, it's only 100 and 200 pages, so I was expecting to go through it and be like, not necessarily like super easy. I did, I do have a, an already kind of knowing relationship with Nabokov, that it's going to be, I'm going to take my time with it, and that's, kind of what I have come to expect, is not to jump into it and just be like scouring through the page, just like rushing through it. So it's like a kind of a simple, cliched thing, but, just to take it slow, for me at least, because to get those words, like, and the literary references too, but I'm trying to think. Like, just like a hint of his, like, kind of prose, it's just, that being Tuesday, he could walk over to the favorite haunt immediately after lunch and stay there till dinner time. No gallery connected to Wayndale, that was his name, Wayndale College, library with any other buildings, but it was intimately and securely connected with Pnin's heart. He walked past the great bronze figures of the first president of the college, Alpheus Fries, in a sports cap and in knickerbockers, holding the horns of the bronze bicycle, eternally about to mount, judging the position of his left foot, forever glued to the left pedal. Yeah, it's just very, very dancing. But yeah, that is all I have for Pnin by Vladimir Nabokov. Thanks for watching.